Ukraine front shifts near Kupiansk, raising regional risk. In northeastern Ukraine, fighting has intensified around the town of Kupiansk, a key logistical hub close to the Russian border. Ukrainian and Russian forces both report limited positional shifts along nearby supply routes. While no major breakthrough has been confirmed, the location itself makes these movements strategically important for the wider war in eastern Ukraine. Kupiansk lies in the Kharkiv region, near critical rail and road connections that support Ukrainian operations across the Eastern Front. Control or disruption of this area affects how troops, ammunition, and equipment move between rear positions and active combat zones. This is why even small changes here attract close military attention. The reported changes have occurred over the past 24 hours, following weeks of relatively static front lines in this sector. Previous offensives in this area have shown that momentum can shift quickly once supply lines come under pressure. At this stage, officials stress that the situation remains fluid rather than decisive. According to regional authorities and military assessments, fighting has involved increased artillery fire, drone reconnaissance, and probing attacks rather than large-scale assaults. These actions suggest attempts to test defenses, gather intelligence, and apply pressure without committing to a full offensive push. From Russia's perspective, pressure near Kupiansk may be part of a broader strategy to stretch Ukrainian forces across multiple fronts. By forcing Ukraine to reinforce defensive positions here, Moscow could reduce Ukraine's flexibility elsewhere, even without achieving immediate territorial gains. Ukraine, in response, has focused on reinforcing defensive lines and protecting logistics hubs rather than counterattacking aggressively. This reflects a strategy aimed at slowing advances, preserving manpower, and preventing supply disruptions that could have wider operational consequences. In a broader context, this activity fits a recurring pattern seen throughout the war: localized pressure designed to create cumulative strain rather than a single decisive battle. Similar tactics have been used along other sections of the front to exhaust defenses and probe for weaknesses. For civilians living in and around Kupiansk, renewed fighting increases the risk of displacement, infrastructure damage, and interruptions to basic services. Even without a major offensive, sustained shelling and drone activity can make daily life unsafe and force evacuations. At the regional level, instability near Kupiansk could affect Ukraine's ability to sustain operations in eastern areas if supply routes are threatened. For international observers, the situation highlights how the conflict continues to evolve through incremental changes rather than dramatic breakthroughs. What remains uncertain is whether these movements signal preparation for a larger operation or represent a tactical adjustment, with limited objectives. Analysts caution against overinterpreting early indicators, noting that many similar probes in the past did not develop into full-scale offensives. The key question going forward is whether pressure around Kupiansk will persist and intensify or fade as resources are redirected elsewhere. The answer will depend on battlefield conditions, available forces, and strategic priorities on both sides in the coming days. For now, the situation near Kupiansk underscores a central reality of the war. Progress is often measured in small, costly shifts rather than decisive turns. Understanding where and why these shifts occur is essential to understanding how the conflict may develop next. The situation near Kupiansk is not isolated. Similar low-intensity pressure has been observed along other parts of the Eastern Front, where movement is measured in small gains rather than rapid advances. This pattern suggests a strategy focused on gradual attrition instead of decisive breakthroughs. By applying pressure across multiple locations, Russia can force Ukraine to spread defensive resources thinner, even when no single sector collapses. The cumulative effect increases logistical strain and limits Ukraine's ability to concentrate forces for counteroffensives. Ukraine's response near Kupiansk reflects a defensive doctrine shaped by earlier phases of the war. Rather than attempting rapid counterattacks, Ukrainian forces prioritize holding terrain, protecting supply routes, and minimizing personnel losses in areas under sustained pressure. This approach accepts limited territorial flexibility in exchange for preserving long-term combat capability. Ukrainian planners appear focused on preventing operational collapse rather than reclaiming ground immediately, especially during winter conditions that favor defensive operations. If pressure around Kupiansk continues, Ukraine may be forced to reallocate forces from other fronts, potentially reducing its ability to respond elsewhere. This does not signal imminent defeat, but it increases the cost of maintaining current defensive lines. For international partners, developments like these reinforce the reality that the war is entering a prolonged phase. Support decisions increasingly hinge on sustainability rather than short-term battlefield momentum. What remains unresolved is whether Russia can maintain this level of pressure across multiple fronts simultaneously. History from earlier stages of the war shows that overstretch has previously limited similar efforts. What has changed in recent weeks is not only the intensity of the fighting, but its geography. Russian forces are applying sustained pressure across multiple sections of the front, forcing Ukraine to stretch manpower and resources. This approach is designed to limit Ukraine's ability to concentrate forces while increasing logistical strain. For Ukraine, the challenge is no longer just holding territory, but deciding where to accept risk in order to stabilize the wider front. The next phase will depend on two variables: external support and timing. Military assistance from partners affects how long Ukraine can sustain defensive operations, while seasonal conditions influence mobility and supply lines. Decisions made in the coming weeks will shape not only battlefield dynamics, but diplomatic leverage. In short, this is a slow-moving turning point, not a single event, but a shift that will define the months ahead. That brings us to the end of this update. What is unfolding in Ukraine is not defined by a single battle or announcement, but by cumulative pressure, decisions made over time, and limits being tested on all sides. Understanding these dynamics is essential to understanding where this war is heading next. For deeper context and analysis, the next video breaks down how these developments connect to the wider global picture. And YouTube has also selected another report it believes you may want to watch. Thank you for staying informed with International News Network.